I finish my workday every day at 12 o'clock noon time. Now, I had him live stream recently and I got asked, what's my typical day? When I thought about this, my day is actually quite different to most people's days. And that's maybe one of the reasons why I've been successful with YouTube, why I've been successful with investing. I want to share a few mindset tricks that have personally helped me that might help you as well. So here's the first secret recipe. I get up every day at 4 o'clock. And that's not because I set an alarm clock. It's simply because I got used to those hours. If for 2, 3, or 4 days, you actually do set an alarm clock, at some point your body will automatically wake up at 4 o'clock, right? There's this adjustment of the circadian rhythm. Now, the secret to waking up that early without being tired is obviously to go to bed very early. So I tend to go to bed at 8 p.m. So why do I do all of this? It's because the morning hours, at least for me personally, are the most valuable hours. This is where really the progress is made. In the morning, there are no interruptions. In the morning, there is no noise. There are no phone calls. There's no nothing. Nobody wakes up that early. And so the early morning hours are ideal to do the very hard tasks. The tasks that needs deep focus, the tasks where we do not want to get any distractions. Now, recently, I've been starting live streaming a bit, and so in the mornings, I do sometimes live stream, simply because of time shifts. Most of the viewers are awake in the very early hours of Malaysia time. But when I'm not live streaming, I actually do the hardest work in the morning hour. Now, what is that hardest task in the morning? It's trying to improve over time. It's trying to learn something. It is not doing operations. So I'm not answering emails. I'm not answering chat messages. I'm not doing any communication whatsoever. I'm trying to figure out ways to make the operational hours where I'm actually working more efficient over time. And this is something that most people don't do. Most people tend to go to bed very late. They might watch Netflix, etc. They might get up at more regular hours, say at 7 or 8 o'clock, and they don't have this morning window where they're actually working at their career, where they're actually trying to improve things over time. That the next year will be better, then the next year will be better than the next year. That year over year, there is improvement. So from 4 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock in the morning, I try to find things that might push things forward. So for example, I might read a book, or I might look at equipment to potentially improve this channel. I might look at the results of A/B testing, right? So let's say I tested different thumbnails, try to figure out what kind of thumbnail in general tends to work better, what kind of title might work better. I might also work on the website, right, for the premium members, maybe add some additional features, etc. So to improve the experience, to improve the value that I'm giving to premium members, so that in the end, because they get more value, stay subscribed longer. So in the end, we'll also generate more business. And it might not even be the execution of improvements. It might just thinking about the next steps to take. So the idea is to try to find out what might have the biggest leverage going forward. What's the correct business strategy? So should I work, for example, to build a Twitter account? Or should I maybe hire an assistant to help me with some work? Should I focus more on thumbnail design? Should I focus more on my own trading potentially? What should I currently focus on? Those kind of early hours in the morning where there are no distractions whatsoever, where the mind is the clearest. Those are, I think, the most important hours that too many people unfortunately skip. And so that's the big difference, right? The difference between working at the business and working in the business. From 4 to 7, I work at the business. Then I have a 1-hour break. I sometimes drive my son to school. Then at 8 o'clock, I actually work in the business. I do operations. So it's like working at the engine at the very beginning of the day versus just adding gas to the engine afterwards. So that means recording videos. That means answering emails. That means supporting members in the chats. So really, operationally, I only work from 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock. 4 hours of heads down operation work. And within those 4 hours, all the videos are made. Within those 4 hours, all the chats are answered. And when you really think about this, right, at your regular job, for example, how many hours of focused down work do you actually really have? How many bullshit meetings do you have during the day? How much water boiler talk do you have during the day? If you really think about this, how much focused work you have operationally is probably not going to be much more than those 4 hours. There's simply just so much clutter that comes in the way. Now, I do this every day. So from Monday to Sunday, I don't really have any weekends. And that's fine, because if the day ends at 12 o'clock, there's still plenty of time. What I do after 12, so from 12 to 2 o'clock, that's usually sport. So that's the gym. I go to work out in order to keep energy levels high, because that's always the problem, right? If we focus too much on mental work, we might completely forget about our physical health. And I approach this a little bit like with video games. If you want to climb up higher and higher, you need to get better and better energy levels. You need to level up. And if you don't have those energy levels, if you don't sleep very well, if your body is sick, then how can we really perform at peak levels in our career? And so that's my typical work day, right? From 4 o'clock to 12 o'clock, that's my regular work. Then from 12 to 2, it's sport. And then what happens from 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock? That's nothing that's structured. And that's what I also had to learn over the years. I do not think that if we add more work hours to the day, that we really improve our life in any significant form. I do not think that we even improve our output. And I also think it makes a lot of sense to not have too much structure day in and day out. Because if everything is planned through, in the end, we might ask ourselves, where has our life gone, right? If we live the exact same day, day in and day out, for many decades, we are wondering what actually happened in 2023, in 2024, in 2025. It was always the same thing. So I think it's better to keep some kind of freedom. Have a part of the day that's completely not structured at all. A part of the day that's for the family, that's for hobbies, that's completely for spontaneous things, for things that haven't been done before, right? For something that's maybe new, just to experience new things in life. Too much structure is probably harmful for creativity, and it's not good for output long term anyways. We need a time to reset. The 100th working hour in a week is probably not going to be as productive as the very first work hour in a week. Think about this. Let's say you work your 56 hours per week, right? So the 8 hours, 7 days a week. You work your 56 hours and now you're increasing this, say, to 80 hours. 80 hours is probably pretty much the limit. Once we go beyond this, then in the end, we will also sacrifice sleep. We will sacrifice our health. So let's say in a healthy manner, we can work up to 80 hours, but we decide to only work 56 hours to keep a little bit of freedom. If we were to move our working hours from 56 to 80 hours, and let's assume that those additional hours are just as productive as the first hours, which is a very big assumption. If we were just to move this in a linear fashion, we would improve potentially our output by roughly 40%. You get 40% more output by making your life miserable. But then when you think about this, is there maybe a way, if you just work on this day in and day out, to increase productivity by 42% over the weeks? Because if there are certain ways to achieve this, then we don't need to work that many hours. That's how I personally think about this. I do work hard, but I try to also work smarter and smarter over time. So let's say you're able, with those first 3 hours in the day, to just improve your activity by 1% per week. If you're able to do this, you don't have to work the 80 hours. You can just work the 8 hours per day. So for me, there's plenty of ways to potentially improve productivity. I could look for better video hooks. I could look for better titles. I could buy a better camera. Maybe the camera has a better picture and maybe 1% less people will click away when they see the better picture. I could get another video editor that helps me to cut things so that I don't have to do video editing, video cutting myself. I have to pay a bit of money, but maybe that money will be worth very much compared to the additional output that I get. What else could I do? I could add another investment platform for copy trading. That's what I've done in January, right? So besides Hyperliquid, we now also have Gravity for automated copy trading. I could get moderators into the Telegram chats, right? That I don't have to answer every single chat myself, but that the moderators support. There's all kinds of potential improvements. And the idea is, of course, we have to try to find the improvement that moves the needle the most. And it's always just a guessing game, right? Maybe if I was to use Twitter actively, the business would suddenly double, but maybe it wouldn't, right? So it's always just a guessing. Where is the time best invested? But in the end, it's really about trying to get things better over time. And the improvement, that's what compounds over time. We cannot sell more and more hours, right? We can't move from 80 hours to 120 hours to 200 hours of work per week. That's impossible. But finding a 1% improvement in the business every week, I think that is possible if we work on that constantly every day during the most valuable hours of the day. And so this is then where there's a difference between being employed, having a regular job, and having a business or having, say, a sales job, something commission driven, right? In a job, your output is not necessarily directly linked with your income. In a business or in a sales job, it is. And so at the beginning, it is easier actually to make money just by selling time. If you're employed somewhere, it's relatively straightforward with some kind of skill to make maybe $5,000 or $10,000 a month. It's not that easy, though, to make $30,000, $40,000 or $50,000 a month. This flips when you have a business. When you have a business, the first $5,000 or $10,000 are very hard, but subsequently, the improvement, that's really what makes the kicker. If you're able to match your employment income with your own business, with your own side hustle, then it's probably time to drop your employment. It might take 2 or 3 or 4 years until you get to that level, but once you're there, just think about this. Let's say here in my example, a YouTube channel. If I find a certain thumbnail design that just has a slightly better click-through rate, then I can improve, in this example, say my income from $10,000 to $11,000 with just this single small little tweak. Imagine how hard it is to increase income by 10 or 20% when you're employed. You have to potentially change jobs to make this happen. Now imagine I buy a better camera. Now imagine I buy a better microphone. Now imagine A and B and C and how all of those improvements then stack up. They multiply. So you don't want to start this business journey if your target is just to match your income, because reaching that income is hard. But if you're okay to just continuously improve, to continuously learn more, to try to find ways to tweak things to make them better, and if you actually enjoy doing this, and if you enjoy this even after you already reached a certain income level that you're actually happy with, but if you still enjoy tweaking it further and further, that's really where the gains are being made. This is where business ownership becomes attractive. So in other words, you want to find ways to detach your output from your input. You want to find ways to lever your output more. So personally, what helped me quite a bit is just trying to get the right mental stimulation. It's trying to follow people that are already way ahead of where I ever will be. It's trying to think about things that to long term will be beneficial. It's not just following an Instagram feed and consuming shorts and consuming Netflix. It's rather reading books like, say, Atomic Habits, or it's following influencers that actually have positive impact, like Alex Hormozi, for example. I consume quite a bit of content that he publishes regularly. If you have the desire to get out of the rat race, to stop being just a salaryman, the easiest way is to build something in parallel. Now, I'm not saying build something on the side. I mean, building something in parallel. In other words, you still have to take this very seriously. You have to take this seriously, potentially even more serious than your current employment. You need to have enough dedication to your employment to keep the job, but really your heart should be with your future, with whatever you're building next. It's mainly about keeping at it over the long term without seeing immediate progress. This is actually where sport and, let's say, going to the gym and building strength is very similar to building a business. That's probably why there's also so much correlation between the two. Many successful businessmen also have a relatively fit body. And that's because when you start out in the gym and you do all of those exercises, it takes months, potentially years, until something is visible. That's the same for business. You build a YouTube channel or you build any kind of business for that matter. It might take a long, long time. For me, I think it took like 2 months, 2 to 3 months until I had my first 100 subscribers here. And then it grows over time quicker and quicker, right? The absolute numbers go up faster and faster. That's potentially the difference between going to the gym and doing business. With the gym, there is at some point diminishing returns, right? We do hit our genetic maximum at some point. I'm very far away from this, but in general, it gets harder and harder to build muscle over time as you progress. That's not necessarily true for making money in the business world or in the trading world. As we have more and more capital, as we have got more and more knowledge, we tend to also compound relatively constantly. The base skill under all of this is really tolerance to frustration. Can you continue to work at a thing without getting rewarded directly? Can you continue and potentially see no outcomes at all or see negative outcomes and just continue working? Because over time, you're very likely going to learn, you're very likely going to improve, and it's just a matter of time until things become worthwhile. A positive future can be brute forced. It's just a matter of effort. In the same way how it's a bad idea to stop working out when we are fit, it's probably also a bad idea to work at the business once the income is already relatively satisfactory. We should always continue striving for progress. And I personally put that work, that very hard work at the beginning of my day. And that's why I go to bed early. And that's why I wake up early. I just like those 3 early morning hours the most. They have transformed my life quite a bit. Now, if you're a morning owl, or if you prefer to work at night, it probably doesn't really matter. The most important thing is that you don't get interrupted and that you can be fully focused without thinking about the random news of the day, without thinking about the drama of the day, to really have 100% dedication towards making things better. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like. It will help the channel grow. Feel free to also check out the playlist. There's a playlist with many of those kinds of videos where I share what personally helped me being more successful. So just click on the channel and then go to playlist. And then I think the playlist was called Mindset and Strategy. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Cheers.